Welcome to the Wealth Acceleration Podcast with your host, wealth coach Wade Reed.
Hey, what is up, Money Masters? It's Wade Reed here for another episode of the Wealth Acceleration Podcast. And today is a special episode as we're nearing Independence Day in the United States. Such a special day in our history where we declared our independence of the British rule and took for ourselves something we really cared about, and that is the right to choose for ourselves to live a life that we love. So many people sacrificed to start this country. They colonized this place. They gave up friends, they gave up family, they gave up comforts, in particular, the comforts that they enjoyed. Even though there was oppression, there were still comforts there in the old world. They came here, they suffered, and man, I am so grateful to live in this free nation, the freest nation in the world. Guys, we cannot take that for granted. We're out there solving problems. We're working for somebody else in a business. We're working for ourselves in our own business. We're trying to do good in the world. We're trying to solve problems for people. And we have the freedom to do that, where so many other countries, if people start to try to create some sort of business for themselves, there's oppressive taxation. And yes, we're taxed in the United States, but it's not like the IRS is on our backs going to take away our lives. It's not like there's a debtor's prison if we're in debt. It's not like there's limitations on the supply chain that we have access to. It's not like there's a major government hand minimizing what we can do. In fact, our laws generally allow us to have the freedom to do just about anything we want. It's absolutely unique, rare, and so valuable that we have the nation that we live in. So we have to protect this thing, guys. We have to protect it. So let's talk a little bit about freedom. Freedom is this opportunity we have to do what we want, when we want, how we want, etc. However, what I've noticed about freedom is that it comes with something really important on the other end. So imagine a stick with me. And when you pick up one end of the stick we call freedom, what happens? You have to pick up the entire stick, and on the other end of the stick is responsibility. With freedom comes responsibility, great responsibility. So let me give you an example of that. I am the father of 6 children. My wife and I have been married 22 years, and we chose together that we would become parents. We really value family. It's a big part of our lives. And so when we picked up the stick of relationship, it came with the responsibility to communicate well with one another, to honor one another, to respect one another. And then when we picked up the stick of parenthood, it came with the responsibility of providing and protecting these children and giving them education, giving them a sense of responsibility, giving them opportunities to learn and to grow and to develop themselves into productive human beings. And any of you who are parents know what I'm talking about here. There is an undeniable commitment when you become a parent, and it is so rewarding. It is so incredibly rewarding to become a parent. There's nothing like it in the world. It helps you become such a more powerful, such a more influential, such a more committed person to life. And I totally get that some of you guys have either chosen out or are unable to have children. I'm just saying, look, when we choose something, we have a responsibility that comes along with it. And the family dynamic happens to be one of those that's really important in my life. What about your business? When you open the door of a business and you pick up the stick of a business, there's a responsibility for payroll for those that you hire, whether they're employees or contractors. There's a responsibility to pay taxes. There's a responsibility to do good bookkeeping, keep track of the income and expenses for that business so there can be an accountability to it. There's a stewardship of the services that you're offering so that there's good customer service that goes along with it. If you're going to offer a product, it should be a product that is quality and that people, if they need a new one or they need a replacement and they need parts, they need some sort of help with it, that they can get it. In my industry, in the personal finance industry, I have too many stories where peers in my industry have started a career trying to become a financial advisor, a coach, a mentor, a salesperson in this industry, and then they make a few clients, and then next thing they know, they can't sustain themselves. They leave the industry. They get tired of it. They realize it's really challenging to be in this industry, and so they leave. And then people are left without the person that they had entrusted some very important financial decisions to. And so I take great pride in the fact that I've been in this industry almost 20 years, 4 years in banking, in the past 16 as a life insurance strategist and as a wealth strategist coaching people. It's not easy, guys. This is a really tough space to be in. And I'm grateful that you're here listening to me, allowing me to share my insights with you, and that you've entrusted me, many of you, to be your coach, to be your mentor, to be your advisor, to be your strategist. So responsibility. One of my favorite stories about this, Viktor Frankl. You guys know I've talked about this before, but he was such an interesting man. He survived the Holocaust. Prior to going into the Holocaust, he was a psychologist, I believe it was, and he was a professor at a university. And then he went through the Holocaust situation, and the one thing that kept him going, despite all of his hair being shaved, losing his name, all of his physical possessions, all that he had left was his will to live, or what he called a will to meaning. And this came to him when he had this vision pop into his mind of himself on a lecture platform in a university hall again, speaking about his experience in the Holocaust as a survivor. And that gave him this vision, this will to have some sort of meaning in his life that was bigger than his circumstances, which allowed for him to overcome the many, many difficulties that he experienced. And as he exited the Holocaust and became a professor again and fulfilled this vision, one of the things he always lectured about was this desire for freedom comes with the alternate of the responsibility, the other side of the stick of responsibility. So in his view, the United States in particular, because he lectured here a lot, he would say that the Statue of Liberty, which represents freedom, ought to be bookended on the west end of our country with a statue of responsibility. For decades, this had been promoted, and there's a group of people about 20 plus, maybe 25 years ago who tried to take it on, and it struggled. And then again, about 15 plus years ago, another group has tried to take it on. There is this effort still to get it built. And those of us who are freedom lovers ought to be looking into that, the Statue of Responsibility Foundation, and see what we can do to help make that a reality. Because we're struggling, man. There's so many people who think freedom is freedom from all responsibility, freedom from rules, freedom from laws, freedom from all potential boundaries in their lives. And let's just talk about that one for a minute. What happens when we want freedom, but we don't want the responsibility that comes with it? That we often call chaos, right? Just think about it. If you take your financial life, since that's the topic I typically I'm so bold about. It's like my life's work. If you take all the financial resources you have and you spend it all, and then you also take available credit on credit cards and you spend frivolously because you just want the things of life. You want to go have the experiences. You want to have the nicest toys. You want to have the nicest clothes. You want to have the nicest home. If you do that, but don't take the responsibility for the payments that come due, you end up in a situation where you are financially destitute, where you're scrambling, where you might do things that you might otherwise morally not want to do. You might become a liar. You might become a cheat. You might become somebody who steals from other people. And this happens, man. There's a moral dilemma when it comes to us being backed into a corner financially. When we lash out, like we're just like that. It's fight or flight. We get this mechanism. And when it comes to money, sometimes we take more than we give to society, and then we become detractors from rather than producers of goods and services. We, instead of being a net value add to society, we end up becoming a net takeaway from society. And there's a lot of selfishness in that. And that we want to be very careful with. Guys, my invitation to you is that the stewardship that is necessary of the financial desires that we have, we want freedom. We actually need to have some level of boundaries. Now, let me give you an example of that that's not money related. Let's look at our driving experience on the road today. In Utah, where I live, the interstate that runs north-south is called I-15. And in the state of Utah, in the areas that are populated, it's about 70 miles per hour is the typical speed limit. When you get outside of the city areas into the more rural parts of the I-15, it's 80 miles per hour. And of course, that's really fast. When I was on the East Coast last year, it was like 55, 65, somewhere in that range on their most open roads. Utah is very, very fast. And there's unfortunately a number of wrecks that take place because people are driving so fast. It's more dangerous to drive fast. But what have we done to help minimize the likelihood of an accident? Well, number one, the vehicles themselves are much safer. The airbags that deploy that go down the sides of the doors, the airbag on the drivers, the knees, and so you don't get crushed and break your legs. There's all kinds of airbag technology. There's driver assist technology now to keep you in your lane. There's adaptive cruise control. So we've developed all these technologies to help allow us to drive that fast. But also look at even much more simpler. In the 50s, there were no lane lines. When driving first came about in the early 1900s, and then it was really chaotic, right? People were all over the place just trying to get around. And then even in the 50s, there might have been a left and a right lane line, but there wasn't really lanes specific to traffic control. And then this started to become a thing. People thought, well, let's put a lane line, let's create some rules around the road system, and let's develop the system. So now we've got on the right-hand side a white line, on the left-hand side a yellow line, and we've got dotted lines in between lanes. And oh my gosh, right? We have so much traffic that's now able to successfully move through cities in the most dense parts of times of day, rush hour, because those lane lines exist and the laws associated with driving. The boundaries that have been placed around driving allow for, instead of chaos, the freedom to get where you want to go quickly. So oftentimes we have this misguided thing when it comes to money. We think we want to have as much money to be able to do anything we want with whomever we want, whenever we want, however we want, without any sort of boundaries or responsibilities. But it can never happen. Never. If you live without boundaries, you harm other people. You place the burden of responsibility on somebody else. And I don't think that's fair. Guys, I want us to really, those of you listening to this, you have to resonate with the message of freedom and responsibility. Otherwise, we're not a good fit, and you're probably not going to stick around. Like, I'm all about having freedom in our lives, but I'm also all about the stewardship responsibility that comes along with that. So, financial freedom, not so much about being rich, but about creating peace of mind. Living within your means allows for peace of mind, allows for you to have savings. Savings allows for you to be judicious in your choices and not be beholden to a specific job. If you have savings, you can choose to leave your position and go somewhere else. You can choose to give your best judgment to a situation where you're called in and said, hey, so-and-so, what do you think about this? You can actually be bold about it, because if you have savings, you don't care about getting fired. You're willing to just be who you are and share what you think is right. You have the option to spend your time how you want. When you have a good management system for your financial life, I'll harp on this all day long, guys. It's not how much you make, it's how well you manage what you make. It's absolutely how you manage the financial resources that matters. Not how much you bring in, because I've seen plenty of high earners, multiple high six figures, even into the seven figures, who are wasteful, who are burdened by the fear of running out of money, by the burden of the size of homes that they've bought and the vehicles that they've purchased, and going into debt, spending more than they're making. And it's devastating emotionally for them. I'm this high income earner and yet I can't get ahead. Simple as money management, guys. Taking the responsibility to be a good steward over your resources. So in order to have financial freedom, to really achieve that, we need to track our financial lives sufficiently that we know on average about what we're spending. We don't have to be absolutely annoyingly penny pinchers. We don't have to know everything down to the exact penny, but we do need to have some sense of what's actually happening. There's always going to be a fear and a sense of uneasiness unless you're willing to do some tracking and get a sense of what you're actually spending. It's a must. And then once you have a good idea of what you're actually spending money on a regular basis, you need 3 to 6 months and ideally a full year worth of tracking over time so you can see what your averages are. And when you know your averages, then you can be less scrupulous about it. And you set an automated transaction. This I talk about in my money management system, OSOM, organize, systemize, optimize, maximize. The system I'm talking about is having a special account that is the go-to clearing account, a wealth capture clearing account. We send all of our money through our savings account first. And then we take an automated withdrawal from the savings to the checking account. And the checking account is where we make the transactions happen for our life. And it's an average amount, like whatever your average is. You just send the average amount and you keep everything else in that wealth capture account, and you build savings because of that, almost as simply as just not having everything in your checking account. You're just less likely to spend it all. It's really powerful. It's super simple, but it's really powerful to have this system in place. So we manage our cash flow. We have clarity because we know where we're at, and then we can have consistency as we steward those financial resources, and then we can have courage to say no sometimes. Right? There's something that you might really want, but you might go, you know what? My future vision is bigger than this purchase today. The things I want to be able to do in the future are bigger than this purchase today. I don't need this. And you're more likely to say no to things, which allows for you to then have a brighter future than you would otherwise have by spending it all. By feeling like the financial freedom is I can do whatever I want whenever I want. Well, you certainly have a right to, but here's the truth. You can have anything you want in this world, just not everything. There's an abundance and despair, and yet we don't have it all today. We can create whatever we want in this world. We can add enough value to society that we get the income that we need to buy the things that we want. We just have to decide what we want the most, and then we can give priority to that. So my invitation to you guys is be good stewards. As we celebrate our Independence Day, let's celebrate the stewardship over our life, our liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Let's be good stewards. Let's be mindful of our health. Let's be mindful of how we interact with our social relationships, especially with our spouse or significant other, our loved ones, our children, our peers. Let's be respectful of one another. Let's care for one another. Let's lift one another up out of their difficult circumstances. Let's be generous with the resources that we have. Let's take the responsibility for the freedoms that we enjoy and make a beautiful life. Like, I want that for you guys. I want you to have a beautiful life. So a free tool that I've created for you that can support this, for those of you who haven't been tracking well and need some way to track, I have this free tracking tool. It's on my Wayne website, moneymasterycoaching.com. It's the first thing that you see there. And I use the word budget, although most of you guys probably hate that, and I don't love it either. But it gets the point across. It's a tool that helps you track your financial life long enough that you can get a good, clear average of your spending, at which point you can have some sense of automation. But you need to do it. If you haven't done it and you're feeling uneasy about what's going on in your money, go grab that tracking tool. Go grab that tracking tool. I've got a tutorial that will help you guide you through it, and you need to do something. You've got to do it, guys. Be responsible for the financial decisions that you're making. Know what you have coming in, know what you have going out, so you know whether or not you're getting ahead, whether you're profitable in your day-to-day financial lives personally. Remember, personal finance has to be personal. It has to become personal to you. You have to take a personal interest in it. Nobody else will care. Nobody else will do it for you. So step up, get clear, and with that clarity comes great sense of confidence. And I know that's what you're looking for. All right, guys. I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you so much for listening. I love you guys. We'll see you soon.
Thanks for tuning in to the Wealth Acceleration Podcast. We hope the insights from today's episode help you streamline your finances, and grow your wealth stress-free. For show notes from today's episode and more tips on creating a comprehensive wealth-building plan, visit moneymasterycoaching.com. Remember, financial freedom is attainable. Until next time, keep accelerating towards your goals. See you on the next episode.